It's harder to keep track of which recipes were made because it's not like the remake where there's always these lines of text and whether they stop being question marks is determined by whether you made them. Instead, there's blank spaces or the recipes, and the order they appear in is which one you made first. And it is impossible to make each in alphabetical order because some recipes require other recipes. There are less recipes in this game, which is better pacing for completing the game. I can't help but be glad they're there because it costs you to grow crops you wouldn't otherwise. But they're really just fake longevity for the game. As a result of there being less recipes, you don't need to buy the special apples to complete the recipe list. You also don't need to buy the medicines to complete the recipe list. You also don't have the useless, inedible sun recipes. The downside is, you can't make medicines. And there's no Ellie leaves. And there's no way to cook relaxation tea leaves. You have to get them the real way. Getting tea leaves is more convoluted because you have to look up a guide to activate them. To know that you have to go to the hut between 3 and 4 PM on a sunny day for no reason in the spring, which I did by accident, and give a gift to each sprite first. Even then, I didn't see any source telling me that I had to talk to one of the sprites before the gift I gave him would count towards the gift-giving process. When you're never gonna do that. There's no reason to talk to the sprite first. And speaking of hiring, I forget if I mentioned it, but it really sucks that you can't hire a sprite for a job that doesn't need to be done already. So you can't hire them for watering if you naturally already watered all of your crops. And you can't hire them for harvesting if nothing needs to be harvested. So good luck if there's a festival before that. Chocolate can only be gotten if you get a bachelorette to merely purple or blue heart by winter Thanksgiving. I don't see a exchange items option, there's just an exchange animals option. So it's a downgrade compared to the Game Boy Color games. One potato recipe requires a stone instead of the stone being an extra ingredient for it. So if you got rid of all of your stones, you have to let a typhoon hit and risk destroying your greenhouse, or cheat. There are both stones and winter stones. And for some reason a winter stone doesn't make the recipe. Who's gonna think of that? In the remake, you never actually need a rock to make a recipe. In the winter, there's a dog race with no major award to it, where the dog only follows you to the end if you threw the ball with him every day for the whole year. Otherwise, you run to the end without him and wish that pausing ended the race immediately. Because then it ended a lot faster. It's too bad the race doesn't end automatically if every other dog wins, because that'd be faster. It was fun the second time when I was actually able to win. I haven't read that it's entirely luck-based if you win. I won effortlessly in the second try. So it's a superior alternative to the Frisbee tournament. It's annoying that you have to stop running for a little bit multiple times in order to win, but whatever. So in this game, the dog ball actually has a reason to exist. You can throw the ball where you can't pick it back up. This makes it suck that you can't simply get a new dog ball from his shop. You have to hope he sells it to you at your door. And that's when it comes in handy that he'll still try to sell you another one even if you already have one. The horse's affection isn't raised by talking to it. I wasted 2 seasons on that thinking I didn't need to brush it. You get to see dancing at the New Year's Day festival. That's a nice novelty the first time, but it lasts long enough to become a repetitive waste of time. There's a goddess festival in the spring, so every year your wife wastes your time expecting you to take her to it. The horse is worse because you have to get on your horse every day for a whole bunch of days to build up a stamina meter for it. You'll have to go out of your way to do that. And after all of that, it was still for nothing. So it sucks that you have to win a horse race to get a power berry. Both of the races in this game start out by telling you every participant, which is a boring waste of time. This game in the remake undid the stupid participants can't bet rule. Except by the time you get to that point, you can't benefit from it anyways. And Rick traps you in the chicken festival until he's decided to start it. When I went to the festival, I didn't have the chicken in my hand. I have to hand my chicken over to Rick. And there was literally nothing I could do to enter it, even with a code. Apparently, you have to plant over 99 flowers and leave the house at noon to get a power berry, which lazily rips off 64 but exaggerates the amount of effort and wasted profit. It turns out you get honey from growing pink cat flowers, which will never grow anyways without a god. Why do you have to unlock honey on your tree? Lewis increases the sale price of your honey by 10 measly G. Only after you do something you'd never do and plant a bunch of these flowers and then give them honey, which you only do after you buy everything, so it doesn't matter. Sure, it would have been useful to have this honey for the sprites early in the game. It wasn't a big loss that he didn't make it to the remake. Most Harvest Moon characters are one-dimensional. They don't bother me, but I'm not invested in or impressed by them. It's no wonder they were dropped for more memory in the cartridge, since they wasted that memory on ridiculous amounts of floors and jewels. At least it's great that Gotts has a friend. At least I assume he's his friend, because he lives with them. Too bad he doesn't have any events with them. The exclusive villagers don't get the depth they should, considering their roles in the town. So it's lame that they didn't get that in the remake. The Cow Festival doesn't take place in the square. So at first I instinctively tried going there for nothing and Barley stopped me because it was taking place where I already was. The same can be said about the Sheep Festival. Maybe the game warns you about this the day before, but this franchise has such a recurring habit of telling you stuff you already know or would have found out effortlessly anyways that you're not trained to pay attention to the person telling you about the festivals tomorrow. Especially since it's usually the same time and place for everyone. When you enter an animal in a festival, she doesn't return the same day, so you don't have to feed the animal for 2 days. Trading can be done, so you can use it to duplicate your animals by trading with your own save files. Cool. But using a glitch that's got nothing to do with the normal gameplay to make money defeats the point of playing the game. That would be like if I used save states to get rich off the Harvest Gods minigame from the first few days of Friends of Mineral Town. You're better off using a code to get rich at that point instead of putting yourself through a long stretch of boredom just to cheat. Might as well do that instead. Money exploits are only good for the playthrough after the first one where you already bought everything. Fishing rod upgrading is different. To get the one better fishing rod, you're forced to have 50 fish in the pond to impress the fishermen. A ridiculously huge amount considering how slowly the fish breed, and even taking all day gets barely any fish dump. So it takes so long to get the fishing pole that you won't get it until you bought everything else in the game. It's a lot more work than how the remake does it. By the time I got the fishing pole, I just started the winter in the second year. Winter caused me to have a code on that has it rain every day that's not a festival because weather codes are the only way I can prevent my hothouse from being destroyed. I only had to do this because in this game you can't change the weather the next day if you stayed up past midnight as usual. And having to go back to the save state from before midnight would be undoing a lot of progress. I wonder why talking to Kai for the first time in the inn gives me an option to ask him to the fireworks display, when I'm not a girl and I'm married. I chose yes to see what happened. Why did my character know to ask that? You can't watch the fireworks with both Kai and your wife. So you're gonna be worried about your wife getting mad at you if you watch it with him. And he doesn't show up at the fireworks festival at all. And I couldn't go into the inn on the festival day. It turns out I was supposed to go to the square from Yoda Ranch after 6 PM. Why do I have to let a typhoon happen before I can trigger an event with Kai on the beach? Ignoring the usual problem for events that only a guide would tell you to go there, I'd have never gone the event the first year when I could have benefited from it most. Why did they have Kai have a love potion? It looks like a perfume, so I guess it's just a name, but how'd they not realize someone might get worried that the reason he's a ladies' man is because it's a literal love potion? Why can't I wrap the perfume? You can only get it from one event in my experience. I think you can get only one event, so it's not like this for the sake of balance. Another one of the events that's new is Kai asking me for corn. Apparently this happens even if I don't have any corn growing. and when I went into my house trying to get some from my fridge, the game crashes every single time I try to do that. A tomato throwing festival is in this game. It's interesting because it sounds so mean-spirited for a Harvest Moon game, but it's worth it to have the chance to throw tomatoes at the characters you hate. Except the second you try to throw a tomato, you'll get hit with one and instantly get kicked out of the game. Why did they think giving you only one hit point was a good idea? It doesn't last long enough to be fun because I didn't get a chance to hit Rick. It ended immediately because I pressed A immediately. It's a luck-based minigame because you're reliant on teammates. So you better pick the right team. I can't find any info on the reward for this festival specifically, so it's not a big deal if you lose it. When I tried it a second time and pressed X instead of A, the first time I still lost immediately. I wish the hiding behind a barrel function was mapped to more than one button, because then it'd be easier to do it when you're just getting used to the minigame. I know it's not the game's fault, but I'm using an Xbox 360 controller, so when the mayor tells me the controls, he's speaking gibberish to me. Another reason the swimming festival sucks. I know what the X button does, I have it mapped to A. The minigame doesn't give you any time where it's safe to test out what button does what. If you don't know how to hide right away, then you're instantly out of the game. Why in the world is hiding mapped to a button instead of the control stick anyways? Another reason the minigame kinda sucks is that your team can still lose even though you were never hit by a tomato. But it is kind of fun when you do hide right away. When you can actually last for a decent amount of time in it. It's just annoying how much you have to hide. When Zach finds out you have nothing to ship, he doesn't waste his time trying to tell you how to earn money, which is better for the pacing when you don't have to ship stuff anymore. It's random whether you trigger rival heart events, which can suck when you actually want them to happen. I'm mainly thinking about Potpourri's events. I went to the beach at 9 AM multiple times in the third year, and only then did Kai's 2 events trigger. I saw nothing on the internet specifying what day of the week it had to be. The first one took me several days to trigger, and he'd been at high affection the whole time. Playing this game reminded me that in both this game and Friends of Mineral Town, you need Potpourri to be an orange heart for him to marry Kai. Yeah, that makes total sense. So that was a lot of work. It took several days in-game of doing nothing but giving her favorite gift. Thank goodness it's as fast as that, because you can still increase affection after the first gift. If this was a remake, I would have had to wait another year, but it still felt like it took forever. But because it only takes a week, it's way better in this game. After the rival event where the doctor was in the confessional, my game soft-locked the first time I tried to see it. My game's also frozen a few times in the hot spring before I changed backenders. I want to know if that happens on original hardware. I've never read anyone complaining about that. Cursed tools aren't a thing to put up with in this game. And there are no mythic tools in this game. So even the best watering can doesn't water everything you can see in front of you. There's no record player. That normally sucks, but doesn't matter to me because I always play these games on mute listening to videos anyways. Golden lumber can't be gotten. Good. It was a pointless waste of your time. You can only own one house. For the sake of completionists, good. An extra house is a useless novelty, and you'll never unlock one in the remake anyways. Jewel of Kappa, Jewel of Truth, and Teleporter Stone aren't in this game. That sucks, but I can buy everything but the townhouse before getting any of those. And most of them aren't nearly useful enough anyways. More importantly, it's a huge pain in the ass to get them. You could have saved a lot of time by just not bothering to get the teleport stone, because it takes several hours in real life to get it. So how many times would you have to use it for the saved time to make up for that? Probably a ridiculous amount of time. The game ends the first spring of year 4 if you somehow didn't get married and didn't have your dog at 6 affection, even though the game never tells you it went back to the first game in the series in that respect. This problem doesn't matter because everyone's going to get married in this game. In the Japanese version, it has the usual requirement for the good ending for this series. The Japanese version had several bad endings. one for having less than 20% of the field cultivated. Which is unfair because by that point you would have had no reason to keep farming and ranching for years, so most of your farm would be weeds. Though you would have had more than enough money to buy enough grass seeds for this. It'd still be tedious to have to deal with this though. But most people didn't play the Japanese version of the game, so nothing I did counts against Back to Nature as a whole. I'm sure most of the fans didn't play Harvest Moon 2 because it's on the Game Boy. So they would have thought something changed since the previous games where this was still a requirement. So that was Back to Nature. It's got enough differences that it might as well be a whole new game as far as these reviews are concerned. It's pretty obvious that Friends of Mineral Town is better. Why would you want to play a version of Friends of Mineral Town where you have to buy flour one at a time, and it takes longer to put stuff in your bank?